Is Donald Trump's decision to cut USAID funding a financial time bomb for Africa? Or is it a long overdue shakeup of how global aid is distributed? Hello everyone, and welcome back to African Finance Watch. Today, we're diving into a decision that's making waves globally. Trump's controversial move to suspend USAID operations for 90 days and possibly shut it down entirely. What does this mean for Africa, a continent deeply tied to USAID funding for decades? And what's Elon Musk got to do with all of this? Stick around, because this is one story you don't want to miss. But first, let me ask you, should Africa continue to rely on foreign aid? Or is this an opportunity to embrace self-reliance? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'll be reading them and responding after the show. What is USAID? For those of you who might not know, USAID, or the United States Agency for International Development, was established by President John F. Kennedy in 1961. Its mission? To promote global stability, alleviate poverty, and counter Soviet influence during the Cold War. It's been a cornerstone of U.S. foreign policy ever since, operating in over 100 countries. From combating HIV/AIDS to providing emergency food aid, USAID has a legacy of humanitarian work. Think of it as America's goodwill ambassador, but with a multi-billion-dollar checkbook. In 2023 alone, USAID managed a budget of over $40 billion, impacting millions of lives worldwide. But here's the kicker. Less than 1% of the U.S. federal budget goes to foreign aid. Yet, for Africa, this relatively small slice of the pie has been a lifeline. So, why would Trump, supported by Elon Musk, call it a criminal organization and a radical waste of money? What's really going on here? Let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. USAID has undeniably done a lot of good in Africa. In South Africa, for example, USAID-funded programs have provided life-saving HIV treatment to millions. In Ethiopia, it has been a key player in addressing food insecurity during droughts. And in Rwanda, USAID's partnership with Zipline, a drone delivery company, has revolutionized access to medical supplies in remote areas. But here's the uncomfortable truth. USAID's aid hasn't just been about charity. Critics argue that it often serves U.S. strategic interests. Countries like Ethiopia, Nigeria, and South Sudan receive aid not just because they need it, but because they are geopolitically significant. The U.S. isn't exactly cutting checks without expecting something in return. For instance, aid often opens doors for American companies to operate in these countries, sometimes under questionable circumstances. While African governments and citizens do see immediate benefits from programs funded by USAID, there's another side to the story. American contractors, NGOs, and pharmaceutical companies often rake in billions from these projects. Before we continue, a quick reminder to like this video if you're enjoying the content so far. And don't forget to subscribe to African Finance Watch, your go-to source for Africa's economic insights and business opportunities, trends, and investment opportunities. Hit the notification bell so you never miss our latest updates. Now let's continue. However, not all outcomes are positive. Some U.S. contractors leave behind bitter tales, especially in the realm of medical research. For example, there have been cases where drugs tested in Africa through U.S.-funded programs caused harm. In Nigeria, the infamous Pfizer drug trial during a meningitis outbreak in 1996 left 11 children dead and many others permanently disabled. Similarly, unethical drug trials in Kenya and Uganda have sparked outrage, with many accusing U.S. pharmaceutical firms of exploiting vulnerable populations in the name of aid. So, is USAID really about helping Africa, or is it about advancing U.S. influence while profiting off the continent? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. So, what exactly has changed? Enter Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Now, here's where things get interesting and controversial. Earlier this year, President Trump issued an executive order placing USAID under the State Department effectively gutting its operations. Reports suggest that the agency's workforce of 10,000 could be slashed to just 300. Musk, who heads a government efficiency initiative, has called USAID a radical left political psyop. He even accused it of funding bioweapons research, although there's zero concrete evidence to back this claim. But why now? Officially, Trump and Musk argue that USAID has become bloated, inefficient, and even corrupt. They say it's time to put America first. Unofficially, there's speculation that this is part of a broader strategy to punish countries like South Africa for their stance against Israel and land reform policies. Could this be true? It's hard to say, but the timing is certainly raising eyebrows. The cost of cutting USAID, a financial time bomb for Africa. Let's break this down in dollar terms. USAID channels billions of dollars into Africa every year, funding critical programs that touch almost every aspect of life. In Nigeria alone, USAID's annual contributions exceed $500 million, supporting education, healthcare, and agriculture. These funds have helped combat diseases like malaria and HIV/AIDS and improve access to clean water in rural areas. In South Sudan, USAID has been a lifeline for millions displaced by conflict, providing food aid, shelter, and emergency health care. Similarly, in Ethiopia, USAID funding has been crucial in mitigating the effects of droughts and famine. In South Africa, USAID plays a pivotal role in the fight against HIV/AIDS. Its PEPFAR, President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief Program, has saved millions of lives, providing antiretroviral treatments to over 3 million people. The agency also funds initiatives to strengthen healthcare systems and support small business development in underprivileged communities. Cutting these funds could plunge millions back into poverty, derail essential health programs, destabilize entire regions, and reverse decades of progress. One study estimates that suspending USAID could cost Africa over $10 billion annually in lost funding and services. That's not just money. It's millions of lives at risk. Imagine hospitals running out of HIV drugs, schools closing their doors, and farmers losing access to vital resources. But here's the twist. Some African leaders and thinkers see this as a wake-up call. Former Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta once said, "We must solve our own problems without relying on U.S. taxpayers." Burkina Faso's President Ibrahim Traoré echoed a similar sentiment, saying, "Africa must rise to the challenge of solving its own problems. Dependency on foreign aid is not the path to true independence." These statements highlight a growing sentiment among African leaders to break free from the cycle of reliance on Western aid. Could this be an opportunity for Africa to embrace self-reliance? Or is it a disaster waiting to happen? You decide. Now, who benefits from stopping USAID? Not everyone sees this as a bad thing. Some argue that USAID's departure could open the door for other global players like China, Turkey, and the UAE to step in. China, through its Belt and Road Initiative, has already invested heavily in African infrastructure. Could this be Africa's chance to diversify its partnerships? Then there's the issue of corruption. Critics say that USAID funds often get siphoned off by corrupt officials and middlemen, doing little to benefit the average African citizen. By cutting off this free money, some believe it could force African governments to become more accountable and self-reliant. But let's not forget who stands to gain the most from USAID's downfall. American taxpayers and contractors who have long criticized the agency's spending. And of course, Trump and Musk, who get to tout this as a win for their America First agenda. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. The conspiracy theory. Some analysts claim that Trump and Musk are using USAID cuts as a way to punish South Africa for its anti-Israel stance and controversial land reforms. South Africa has been vocal in its support for Palestine, and its land reform policies, aimed at redistributing land to Black South Africans, have faced criticism from Western powers. Is there any truth to this? Honestly, it's hard to say. But the optics are certainly suspicious. If this theory holds water, it raises troubling questions about how foreign aid is being weaponized in international politics. So, where does Africa go from here? Some experts argue that this is a golden opportunity to rethink the continent's development model. Instead of relying on foreign aid, African countries could focus on attracting foreign direct investment (FDI), boosting intra-African trade, and building local industries. Take Rwanda, for example. When USAID cuts were announced, Zipline, a US-based drone company operating in Rwanda, said it was time to focus on building local capacity. Imagine if the billions spent on importing HIV drugs were used to build pharmaceutical factories in Africa. Imagine if aid money was redirected toward infrastructure, education, and innovation. But this won't happen overnight. African governments will need to step up, and the private sector will need to play a bigger role. It's a daunting task, but it's not impossible. After all, necessity is the mother of invention. We cannot conclude this video without taking reactions from around the world on this development, because it is not only Africa that is affected. Unsurprisingly, Trump's decision has sparked outrage and concern. Ndidi Nwuneli, CEO of the One campaign, called the move upsetting and irrational, warning that it could reverse decades of progress. Meanwhile, Hannah Ryder of Development Reimagined sees a silver lining, arguing that it could push African countries to take localization and exit strategies more seriously. Jeremy Konindick, a former USAID official during the Obama and Biden administrations, describes the agency's work as urgent and warns that gutting it would disrupt vital public health initiatives. He points out that USAID-supported programs currently provide life-saving HIV treatment to 20 million people. On the flip side, some African citizens have welcomed the cuts, saying it's time to end the cycle of dependency. As one South African activist put it, "We don't need charity. We need investment and respect." What do you think? Are these cuts a blessing in disguise or a ticking time bomb? Let me know in the comments. Trump's USAID cuts are more than just a political statement. They're a seismic shift in how the world approaches foreign aid. For Africa, the stakes couldn't be higher. Will this be the beginning of a new era of self-reliance, or will it plunge millions into crisis? The answer depends on what happens next. If you found this discussion insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to African Finance Watch. And remember, the future of Africa is in our hands. Let's keep the conversation going. Thanks for sticking with us to the end. If you found this video helpful, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to African Finance Watch for more in-depth content on Africa's economy and investment opportunities. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when our next video drops.